On a Wednesday afternoon in March, my regional vice president stood in front of the entire sales division and took credit for a deal I had spent 14 months building. 2 hours before that meeting, without telling me, she had rewritten the commission structure that applied to it. The contract was worth $4.2 million over 3 years, the largest the company had signed in 9 years, and the number I had been promised on it, $126,000, had just become $8,400. I sat in the third row. People clapped. Someone next to me leaned over and whispered, "That's your account, right?" I said it was a team win. Renata didn't look at me once during the slide. I want to be honest about something before I go further. I didn't stand up. I didn't email anyone that night. I didn't call my mother, who would have told me to fight, or my partner, who would have told me to quit on the spot. I went back to my desk, opened a blank document, and typed the client's name at the top of the page. Underneath it, I wrote the date. That was the only thing I let myself do that day. Anger burns fast, and I was going to need something that lasted a lot longer than anger. Under the date, I added one more line, everything, from the beginning. Then I closed the laptop and went home. Halstead Logistics wasn't supposed to be my account. I'd cold emailed their operations director, I'll call him Marcus, after finding his name on a supply chain panel recording nobody else at the company had bothered to watch. He didn't reply for 6 weeks. When he finally did, it was one line. Interesting. Send me numbers, not a pitch. That was the whole relationship for the first 2 months. Numbers, not pitches. The deal took 14 months to close, and I mean that literally. I counted. Later, when counting things became something I did instead of sleeping. 3 separate rounds of procurement. A competitor who undercut us by 11% in round 2, which meant 6 weeks of restructuring the proposal without touching the number Marcus actually cared about, which was implementation timeline, not price. A trip I paid for out of my own relocation miles balance to walk their warehouse floor in person when the deal stalled in month 9, because Marcus had said once, offhand, that he didn't trust anyone who'd never seen a loading dock. I saw the loading dock. I remember exactly how cold it was in there, in November. For most of that time, Renata was the boss everyone told me I was lucky to have. She looped me into leadership syncs I technically didn't need to be in. In the Q2 all hands, 9 months before the town hall that ended all of this, she'd put my name on a slide with the words, "One to watch" under it, and I'd felt, briefly, like I was somewhere on the way to somewhere good. The shift started so quietly that I didn't clock it as a shift at all. I clocked it as busyness, hers and mine both. Around month 8, the weekly pipeline update she used to send with me CC'd started arriving without me on it. When I asked, she said it was just for efficiency and that she'd loop me in on anything that needed my input. I believed her, because there was no single moment that felt like a lie. There was just a slow subtraction. An exec sync I used to attend became one where she asked me to just send her the numbers beforehand instead. A deck went out to the broader leadership team in month 11 with an account owner field left blank next to Halstead's name. When I mentioned it, she called it an administrative oversight and said she'd get it fixed. It was never fixed. None of it, on its own, was anything. I want to be precise about that, because it would be easy to tell this part of the story as though I saw it coming and did nothing, and that isn't what happened. What happened is that I was 14 months deep in the hardest close of my career, and I didn't have the attention left over to notice that the ground under it was moving. There was one moment I didn't understand until much later. A colleague, I'll call her Priya, she sat 2 desks down and had been there longer than I had, mentioned once, in the break room, almost as a joke, that the rep who'd closed the company's previous biggest account had left kind of suddenly, the year before I started. Burnout, probably, she'd said, and shrugged, and we'd moved on to something else. I didn't think about that conversation again for 11 months. When I finally did think about it again, it stopped being a joke. By the week of the town hall, I had put in 14 months, 47 calls I could account for because I logged everything in the CRM out of habit, 12 in-person or video meetings with Marcus and his team, and a warehouse floor in November I still think about when it's cold out. I had also, without fully admitting it to myself, started keeping a mental list of small things that didn't add up. I just hadn't opened the file on it yet. 2 days after the town hall, I was looking for an old proposal template in the shared drive. Nothing to do with any of this, just ordinary work. And I found a folder I didn't recognize. Sales Ops. Commission Structure Revisions. Q1. I almost closed it. I don't fully know why I didn't. Inside was a single document titled Threshold Cap Adjustment, Enterprise Tier, dated the same week as the town hall. I opened the file properties out of nothing more than habit, the way you check a receipt even when you already know the total. The created date was 11 days before Halstead signed. 11 days. Not 11 days before the town hall. 11 days before the contract even existed as a signed thing. I read that date 3 times before it fully landed. The document introduced a hard cap on commission payouts for any single deal over $2 million, retroactive to the start of the quarter. There was exactly one deal in the entire pipeline that quarter, over $2 million. It had my name in the account owner field, the one that kept going blank. I sat with that for a long time before I did anything with it. Then I went back through my own records, the CRM logs, the emails, the calendar invites Marcus and I had traded for over a year, and I found something else. In month 10, when the deal had nearly died in round 2, Marcus had sent an email to Renata, CCing 2 people above her, saying he wanted it on record that I was the only reason this hadn't already fallen apart, and that he'd be recommending the partnership specifically because of how I'd handled it. It was still sitting in the thread. Nobody had ever mentioned it to me. I called Priya that night, not to gossip, just because she was the only person I trusted enough to ask a strange question. I asked her, carefully, if she remembered anything else about the rep who'd left the year before I started. She went quiet for a second, and then she told me 2 more names. Not rumors, names of people she'd actually worked alongside, both of whom had closed large accounts under Renata in years past, both of whom had seen their commission structure change within weeks of closing. 2 other names. 3 deals, counting mine. Same pattern. 3 separate years. I didn't feel triumphant hearing that. I want to say that clearly, because it would make for a better story if I had. What I actually felt was quiet, and a little sick, and very awake. The way you feel when a shape you'd been squinting at finally resolves into something with edges. I did not walk into Renata's office the next morning. I know how satisfying that version of this story would be, and it isn't the true one. I understood, sitting there that night, that if I reacted before I had something airtight, I would be one upset employee's word against a VP's, and I would lose. Not the argument, necessarily, but the job, the reference, probably the relationship with Marcus that had taken 14 months to build. So instead, I made a new folder inside the first one. I named it Pattern. Under the date, I wrote 1 more line, 3 words, and then I didn't touch the file again for 4 days. Not yet. The 4 days I didn't touch the file, I spent finding an employment lawyer. Not to threaten anyone, just to understand, plainly, whether a commission plan could legally be rewritten after a deal was already earned under the plan that existed when the work was done. I won't reconstruct the whole conversation here, because it isn't the interesting part. The interesting part is what I did with the answer, which was, build a timeline so complete that nobody would be able to argue with the shape of it, only with what it meant. That was a Tuesday. By that Friday, 2 more names were in my inbox, people I hadn't contacted, who'd heard through Priya, carefully, that I was asking questions. Neither of them wanted to file anything formally. Both of them wanted their names attached to mine, quietly, as a pattern, if I ever did. I spent the following week turning 14 months into a single document. 47 logged calls, 12 in-person or video meetings, 214 emails, most of them irrelevant, 6 of them not. The 11-day early file. Marcus's email on the record, CC'd to 2 directors, praising me by name before any of this started. And underneath all of it, in its own section, the 3-deal, 3-year pattern. not accusing anyone by name, just laid out as dates next to dates. I submitted it as a formal written commission dispute to HR and to finance compliance, not to Renata directly, and I addressed it to the plan that was signed and in effect at the start of the fiscal year, the one that existed before the 11-day document did. I made a decision at the same time that I now think mattered more than the paperwork. I kept managing the Halstead account exactly the way I always had. Same response times, same weekly check-ins with Marcus. I did not tell him anything about what was happening internally. I told myself that if the work had actually been good, he'd remember who did it without me needing to say so out loud. Compliance opened the file on a Thursday. I know that because they told me, in an email so neutral it could have been about anything, that my complaint had been received and was under review, and I read that sentence more times than a sentence like that deserves. Renata requested a meeting once compliance flagged the file to her, not a confrontation on my terms, hers, which I think she assumed would put her back in control of the room. HR sat at the head of the table. She asked me, in front of them, why I hadn't come to her directly first, before going over her head. I had one line ready, and I only used it once. I told her the truth, that the last time someone believed a conversation with her would be enough to fix something like this, they still didn't have their money back. That was the whole thing I said. Then I turned to HR, asked what the next step in the process was, and left the room before anyone could turn it into a longer conversation. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I had spent 4 months making sure I wouldn't need to. The investigation took 6 weeks. I wasn't in the room for most of it, which was its own kind of strange, waiting to find out the outcome of something built entirely out of my own evidence. What came back, eventually, was this. The 11-day early document was confirmed, its timeline undisputed, because file metadata isn't the kind of thing you can argue your way out of. The retroactive cap was reversed, not just for me, for the whole enterprise tier, permanently, which meant 3 other people I'd never spoken to about any of this got commission checks that quarter they hadn't expected. I got the difference on Halstead, $117,600, paid out in the next cycle. I thought that would feel like winning. It didn't. It felt like a debt being repaid on time, which is not the same thing as trust being repaired. I had already decided, somewhere in those 6 weeks, that I was leaving regardless of what the investigation found. I handed in 2 weeks' notice on a Monday. There was no scene. I didn't mention the file, the pattern, or Priya's name once in my exit conversation. I just said it was time for something of my own. What happened after I left, I only know secondhand, and I'm careful about how much weight I put on secondhand things. Except for one number, which came from someone in finance who had no reason to exaggerate it to me. 4 months after I resigned, 11 of the 42 open opportunities in Renata's remaining pipeline had gone cold or been reassigned. 9 of the 11 had my name somewhere in their account history as a past contributor or referral source, even though I hadn't spoken to a single one of those clients since I left. I don't think I did that. I think what actually happened is smaller and less satisfying than a story where I reached back in and pulled the department apart on purpose. A team that had watched what happened to me stopped trusting the person running it. In the ordinary, unglamorous way people stop trusting a manager. They got quieter in meetings, they stopped bringing her their hardest deals, and deals that don't get brought to a manager have a way of dying on their own. I don't know everything about the pressure Renata was under from above her. I never saw her calendar, never sat in her one-on-ones with the people she answered to. I don't say that to excuse the 11 days. I say it because she wasn't, as far as I could tell, a villain in a story that needed one. She was someone who made a choice under pressure that I hope I don't make when the pressure eventually finds me, whenever it's my turn to run something bigger than myself. That doesn't undo what the document said. It just means I don't think she woke up one morning and decided to become the person in this story. I think she got there one convenient decision at a time, the same way most people get anywhere. 6 weeks after I left, Halstead's contract came up for its annual review, a normal, contractually scheduled thing, nothing I orchestrated. Marcus emailed the general inbox asking, politely, if I was still with the company, because he'd rather route the review conversation through someone who actually understood the account. He was told I'd left. 2 weeks after that, he emailed me directly, my personal address, which he'd had for over a year and never once used until then, and asked what I was doing now. What I was doing by then was very little. A small independent consultancy I'd registered almost as an afterthought, mostly so I'd have something to put on paper while I figured out what came next. I told him the truth. He asked if I'd be willing to talk to Halstead's leadership about handling their renewal directly, outside the agency relationship entirely, given how the last year had gone on their end too. I said I'd think about it. I thought about it for 4 days, which felt, by then, like exactly the right amount of time to think about anything. Here's what I know for certain, the specific parts, not the vague ones. Renata is no longer a regional vice president. She was moved, about 5 months after I left, into an individual contributor role in a different territory. Not fired, not publicly humiliated, just quietly repositioned into a job with a lot less room underneath it. The retroactive commission cap that started all of this is gone from the plan entirely, permanently, for everyone in that company, not just for the deal that happened to be mine. And Halstead Logistics signed a first-year agreement with my consultancy, worth more than my old base salary and bonus combined. Not because I took anything from anyone, but because a director I'd spent 14 months being straight with decided, on his own schedule, that he wanted to keep working with the person who'd actually done the work. I don't think of any of this as something I did to Renata. I think of it as something she built, one convenient decision at a time, 11 days before she needed it, and eventually had to stand inside. She got what she'd built toward. I only made sure the paperwork could still be read once someone finally looked. I'm not going to tell you I'm better off, because better off implies a straight line from where I was to where I ended up, and there wasn't one. There were 4 months of quietly building a case while still showing up, on time, for a job that had already told me what it thought I was worth. What I am is more accurately located. I know exactly what I'm owed now, and exactly how long I'm willing to wait to make sure I get it, and those are 2 things I didn't know with any precision 14 months ago. I don't have a clean lesson to hand you at the end of this, and I've stopped trying to find one. Some people get caught right away. Some people get caught 11 days after they thought they'd covered it. And some people never get caught at all. And I've made my peace with the fact that I don't get to control which one Renata would have been if I hadn't found that folder by accident, looking for a proposal template that had nothing to do with any of this. If any part of this felt familiar, if you've ever sat in a room and clapped for a decision that was quietly built to cost you something, and gone home and said nothing, and started a file instead, I'd genuinely like to know. That's most of why I make these. Not to tell you what to do with it, just to know I'm not the only one who's ever gone home and opened a blank document instead of saying something out loud. Drop comment if you made it to the end. I read every single one,